I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, though, and focus on national societies, talking a little bit about, maybe a little bit of how to get involved. And it's a little bit tricky, and I'll get it added in my slides. And then maybe just some thoughts on success. What is success with your involvement there? And that's kind of a personal decision, but what that could look like. And I think hopefully we'll have some opportunity for time because all of us, Rock, Jason, Daryl, we've all been very involved with different societies, sometimes the same societies. We probably all have different stories on how we became involved and how we've had some success in these societies, depending on how you define that. And so it'd be nice to have everybody's perspective on this topic. And as no disclosures are relevant to that. But as Rock said, I think all of us have had various involvements in a number of societies, and again, you could define some of that as success or not in those societies as well. So I think first and foremost, we've got to look at, well, what is the purpose of a national society, right? So when we think about getting involved, we also need to understand sort of what is the mission of these societies? What do they do? Because that can help you understand personally what you want to do. How do you want to get involved in these? And in general, all national societies to some extent do these things I've bulleted here, and maybe not all of them, right? So most societies provide education, right? They do that through their national meetings, maybe one-off meetings, webinars, et cetera. They provide avenues to report out your research, to present research, to learn about research, and then also support research, right? Many have fellowships, granting mechanism, et cetera, so they support research as well. Many have publications, right? Much of our major societies have a publication associated with, so a way we can get out information distributed to the membership as well. Many are involved in advocacy, right? Like, how do we stay in practice? Who is your advocate, right? It could be at the grassroots level, state level, but it's also at the national level. So many of our state societies have paid lobbyists that interact with Washington, D.C. Many have groups that work at the state level to influence state societies, influence like payer policies, making sure patients have access to certain procedures, right? So there's many important arms there. National societies provide networking, right? Which we've all on this call have been involved with, right? We can get out, we can meet with people that we enjoy being around, maybe people we've never met before, right? This is how a lot of us even know each other on this call is that, we've seen each other at meetings, we've met each other, et cetera. And then I think most importantly, it provides a community, right? We are all like people in some extent. We're all spine surgeons, right? We're all interested in that, and we form a community, and communities take care of each other, and that's an important role of national societies. So I think first and foremost, when you look at survey data, why does anybody get involved with this? And there's a variety of answers here, but when you look at the top four, it's one, people want to be involved because they want to keep up with, what's going on in the world, knowledge advancement and upkeep. Career networking and academic promotion is an important aspect to be involved with, so that does help you. As I mentioned, there's the social aspect as well. And then there's the ability to present your original research. That may be fourth, but it's still in the top four. This is why we, as members of these societies, get involved. But I think an alarming trend we are seeing to some extent with some stagnation and also some falling membership numbers in certain societies, we're starting to see surgeons disengage, right? If you look at the survey here, it's mainly driven by cost. As we were joking around before we started this with regards to dues, look at your due payments. And we've been doing this for a while, and maybe some of you are just out of fellowship or in fellowship and residency. Dues have risen dramatically over the last 5, 10 years, and they have no sign of slowing down. As industry stops supporting our meetings and organizations, dues will have to rise for that. And then lastly is time, right? Frankly, you have to take a fair amount of time to be involved. Time costs money to you personally, if you're more in a private or incentivized model, but also institutions, right? As a department chair, we have to think very carefully who we approve to go to meetings, how many people, how many days, et cetera. And it's not the cost of attending the meeting or the time for the meeting, it's the lack or the opportunity loss at the institution. So this is becoming more of a troubling type trend we're seeing, and this will probably continue going forward. And so, when we look at involvement here, the task is how do you get involved? First is what does involvement mean? Like, right? How do you even define that? I guess you could look at it in kind of two general ways. One is just being involved or attending the organization and being a key member of that organization, right? You don't have to run a committee, be an officer, but you're an integral part of that group. And I think the key with involvement there is you've got to be engaged and you've got to participate, right? We've all seen that at our meetings. Look at LSRS if you've not been there. There's some people you see in the audience every year that are engaged, listening to the research being presented, go up to the microphone, say their name, ask questions. So they may not be running a committee, but they are a key active member of that organization that is highly involved. And so that key there is participation, engagement, being vocal, being present, right? So that's an important aspect. That's the easiest way to get involved because all you have to do is to be a member, but be an engaged and vocal member. The other aspect is having some interest in being involved in the mission of the society, right? So some aspect of that a national society interests you, and you want to be involved in that, right? And that can be in anywhere from one, you just want to present your science at it, so it's a little bit more high level, just being in the audience. You want to be a person who's more regularly at the podium, so you're submitting abstracts routinely. Maybe you serve as a faculty member in a course or a symposia. You're a moderator, right? Another higher level, you're more involved in the education mission of the organization, or you're involved in a committee, right? You're involved either as a member of a committee, you run a committee, and here you have an opportunity to align your interests to the committee structure of the organization, right? So if you're interested in publications, maybe you're on the publication committee. If you're interested in advocacy, maybe you're on the advocacy committee or however they name that committee. So for example, so you can align your interests with it. So those are the ways to get involved, I guess, and that's a very simplistic way to look at it. But getting involved can be challenging, right? So I think this is the hardest part, and it's funny because it's one of the key aspects of my talk, but it is still remains one of the hardest part is how do you get involved? And this can be challenging, right? Because to some extent, getting involved is a little bit of a black box, so to say, right? There's unclear opportunities, like who knows what opportunities are available. It's not very well publicized who's looking for what, right? It's also unclear who's making the decisions, right? So say there's an unclear opportunity that you may want to try to investigate, but you're not sure even who's going to decide who's taking that on. So that makes it more a challenge as well. And then often when you look around on these organizations, it's the same people at all these organizations that are in leadership roles. So it's to some extent kind of who you know, right? It's maybe less of a meritocracy to some extent, but as long as you know and chum around with the right person, they're going to get you involved and you're going to stay involved, et cetera. So this is some challenges that make it hard to get involved in some of these societies that exist. So how do you do it? How do you do it? Well, one, I would argue, look around and see who do you know, right? Who do you know that is involved? And speak to that person, right? So many times that person can now become your mentor, right? So if you see Daryl Brodke at a meeting who's involved in all the major organizations, go up and talk to him. Tell him that you are interested, right? Tell him that you want to, get to know him better. You want to get involved with this organization. He probably would help you out, I would argue, right? Talk to other people that look like they've been involved as well, right? Look at people that are, hey, I'm running to a committee meeting. Oh, how'd you get involved in that committee? What does that committee do, right? Use your mentor. Oftentimes, your mentor through fellowship or through research, or one of the many fellows that we all have, like Jason Savas mentioned, may be involved or know some key players involved in those organizations. Let them help you, right? Get involved as well. You just have to speak up, network with others, right? Meet people you don't know. Remember, we're a community, we're a network. Network with other people at these organizations, and they can help you as well. And I think what's also important is to try to understand what opportunities exist in these national organizations. And that's important to understand what the organization's missions are and what aligns with what you're interested in, right? Do they do advocacy? Are they involved in education? Maybe it's just a research organization. So how do you align with that? And you can do that by talking to people, looking at websites, et cetera. And fortunately, there are some groups that do solicit involvement through committee work. Say, for example, NAS does a very nice job of that, right? Where you can go online, you can look at committees, and you can actually apply for committee membership. And that may be one of the easiest ways to do that, but you may not know it exists without going through the top two steps, talking to others, network, et cetera, and see what's available out there. And I hate to say it though, some of it is just being in the right place at the right time, right? You were there when somebody needed somebody, you were talking to the right person. But if you're not networking, you're not meeting people, you're not speaking up, this may never happen to you. Okay. So it is true. Sometimes it's being at the right place at the right time, but you got to be at the place to hope it is the right place. So it's important. Lastly, don't be afraid to speak up, right? So if you want to get involved, you want to do something in an organization, sometimes you just got to say something. And if you don't, oftentimes it just doesn't come organically and bubble up and you get involved. And I'll give you my story here, how I first got involved in organized neurosurgery as an example, is I was at the scrub sink with the chair of neurosurgery at the time. His name was Mark Mayberg. We were scrubbing into a case, and I told him I wanted to get involved. I may have been a PGY 2 or 3 at the time, and I wanted to get involved with something called the Young Neurosurgeons Committee at the AANS. And he said, "Oh, Mike, you don't want to do that. You want to join the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. It's a much younger group, much more involved. That's what you want to do." And he didn't give me any instructions. He just left it at that. We went in and did the case, and that was the last I heard of it. But 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail, and I opened the envelope, looked at the letter. It was a letter from a guy named Mark Hadley, who's a spine surgeon at the University of Alabama, who was the president of the Congress at the time, inviting me to be the chair of the resident program for his meeting. I took that on, planned the meeting with him from the resident standpoint. The next year, the person who was on the executive committee, who was the resident committee chairman, couldn't make it to the meeting. I filled in, presented, got noticed, and then got put on the executive committee from there and stayed on for about 13 years. Eventually became the vice president of the organization. And then just fast forward to last year, I received the Distinguished Service Award from that same organization, the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. And I mentioned what happened to me in that talk and told everybody in the audience to really look at those people who you are mentoring and look at opportunities that are there and help them. Like Mark Mayberg and Mark Hadley helped me, right? So these two guys helped me, and they had a huge influence and helped me get to all the steps that I made professionally in these organizations. But it really came back from me speaking up, I think. So don't be afraid to speak up. Now, if you are involved, how do you be successful? Well, one, you just got to realize you can't be president the day you walk in, right? So it doesn't happen, right? So you've got to put in the work. You got to work hard. You got to take the jobs that are offered to you, even if they're small, do a good job and work your way up, right? That's just the reality of it, is the way these things work. It's also important to take an opportunity if it's given to you. Okay. So if you're the person that keeps turning things down, from somebody, they're going to stop asking, right? So take an opportunity. It may be small. Do a good job with it, and you're going to get noticed, right? Try to align your interests because you're going to do your best job if what you take on aligns to what you're interested in. Oftentimes, this isn't a perfect match, but if you can, try to make that known as well. You need to be engaged, right? So, what do we always say when we run committees? You need members that show up, speak up, and contribute. You got to take on projects and you got to complete those projects, right? Those are the key elements of somebody who does a great job on a committee, who's going to keep on getting other roles, maybe a leadership role next or down the road here. So those are some of the key aspects here. And don't overstretch your involvement. We see some young people that take on this, take on that, take on 5 things to stay really involved, never get any of them done. You're taking on everything, you're doing most of it, but you're not getting anything done, and that can be even worse at times. So take on what you can do and get it done successfully. Hard work does pay off, and it is noticed, right? You don't have to advertise it to everybody about, look how much hard work I'm doing, look at what I've done. People notice. It's going to open up other additional opportunities. And again, think strategically, though, as you continue to move on. Try to align your interests with those things. You're going to do the best chance of that. Leadership roles will come your way if you're interested in that, right? You're going to be on a committee. You may be moved up to a vice chair of that committee for a while. Maybe you're a committee chair. Maybe you move up into an officer role eventually. So this is how these things steamroll going forward if that's what you're interested in. And then, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay with one society and just try to do really good with that? Maybe you want to try to get involved with multiple societies. I think this is really dealer's choice. You've got to do this yourself, but again, you've got to align what you're interested in, right? Maybe you just are interested in education in lumbar spine research, like the LSRS. Focus on that. Stay in there. But maybe you want to be more involved in the broader AAOS and LSRS, or you're an MIS person, you're SMIS plus LRS. So align with what you want to do. Don't be afraid to reach out, because remember, we're the lifeblood of all of these organizations. They can't survive without us as members and as people volunteering for committees. So don't be afraid to branch out when you can to other areas as well. Also, know your goals. What do you want to do, right? If you want to be the president of LSRS, well, there's often a pathway. Know what that is, set your goals, take on projects, take on committees that are going to get you through there. Sometimes people don't want to do that at all, right? They just want to be on a committee that's involved with grassroots advocacy because they really enjoy it. They never want to be a committee chair. Don't volunteer for it. Just go and do a good job, work hard, and that's it, right? So know your goals, try to fulfill them in that way and find a good mentor along the way. This is what this whole webinar is about mentorship. Find a mentor that can help you. You may have a specific society level member that's going to help you through this as well. And also know your limitations, right? I would argue that some of the most rewarding professional times I've had have been in organized medicine, spine surgery, neurosurgery, et cetera. I met wonderful people like all the people on this webinar from those organizations. These are lifelong friends, lifelong mentors. Never would have done that through that. But remember, it's all volunteer work, right? There's significant time required that is going to be time away from your family. So you got to know your family, know your support structure, right? There's a bunch of meetings, webinars. Sometimes it's multiple times a week, right? So is that going to work for you? Is that going to work for your family? Understand what your limitations are. Remember, there's often significant travel. As Ed Benzel used to always tell us, if you're going to do this and you can take your family, you can take your significant other, make sure you take them with you. It's going to help support you and keep that family together as you go through it. And then lastly, is it all worth it, right? This is a ton of time. It's all basically free. It's taking time away from your family and your work. Is it really worth it? And I would argue it is, right? And the way I look at this is I think we all in life to some extent are looking to sort of paint our masterpiece, right? Our Mona Lisa. And that's really having that impact on our professional lives. And the question is, how are you going to do it, right? There's very, very few of us that have the surgical sort of chops to say that you are the best spine surgeon in the United States, and that's what you're known for, and that's what you're leaving behind you. There's one or two people probably in their lifetime that do that. We can do it through research, right? We can publish papers that have lasting impact, change the field, change our thought process. Again, very few of those occur. But how we interact in these societies, what we can do if we have a critical role, a critical project, maybe we start something new in a society, maybe we are an officer and we change the way it's done, you're having a lasting, lifelong impact on us as professionals going forward. And you could look at that maybe as a way that you can paint your masterpiece and leave that behind as part of your part of what you left behind when you move on. So